Chapter 8, Box of Memories. Where do we even go from how it ended last time? After that, it was several hours before I moved or anyone showed up. I felt terrible. I mean, the only person I might have contacted after that would have been Dr. Sasky. Like, help! I don't know. But I would have been terrified. I don't even know if I would have thought to try anyone. If I did, it would have been Sasky. If I didn't, it would be because I was absolutely terrified of something worse happening. I might have tried to leave after that. Just leave. But my head felt like it was splitting in half, and I didn't want to attempt it. Instead, I moved to the sofa in the front room so I could watch the door. I didn't need to be close to it. I was keeping my sphere wide open. But I wanted to be close enough that if someone tried to come in, I could send them off properly. Caleb was the first. I flung a pot plant his way, ignoring the pain it sent shooting through my skull. Next was Vaughn. I held the door closed, because at this point, who could I trust? Yeah, it's true. It's true. I'm with you, girl. Any of them? Had they known? Had Dr. Sasky known? Is that why he wanted me to take that damn medication? I don't think so. Not knowingly. Like his brain, maybe his memory got erased as well. I don't know. I didn't know who was on my side. I didn't know why there were even why there even needed to be sides. One thing I discovered was that I could let myself doze off without releasing my sphere, as long as I didn't fall too deeply asleep. I'd been doing a good job of it, but I must have slipped up, and that's how Magnus got into my flat before I jolted awake. I almost threw something as soon as I realized he was there, but hesitated at the sheer look of foolish surprise on his face. And the fact he was holding a tray of food out to me like a peace offering. And it was so like him that I hesitated, and that was my last mistake. He edged closer still, sliding the tray onto the low coffee table. I stared at it, not quite registering its contents.
Morgan, I should have come sooner. I'm so sorry.
It hurts. I didn't think I meant to say that, but it was the first word that came out. Magnus sat next to me, concerned as he leaned to get a look at my face.
What hurts, Morgan? What's wrong?
My mind, head, hurts. Magnus wrapped his arms around me. I flinched but relaxed as his warmth seeped into me.
You power surged and it kept your sphere active for far too long. It's psi fatigue.
Aw. He spoke softly, stroking my hair, and then she just started bawling. I curled into him, quiet sobs tearing out of me. At the pain, at what had happened, the sheer, hopeless darkness threatening to overwhelm me. He lowered his head to mine.
Just let go. You can't keep this up, Morgan. You have to retract your sigh and let your mind rest.
I can't. Magnus pulled away and cupped my face. I could barely see him through the tears.
You have to. I don't want to lose you. Morgan, let go.
I let out a long, shuddering breath, swallowing hard as I let my sphere collapse inward. My entire body shook with the force of me retracting it and cocooning myself in a comforting bubble of sigh. Then I abruptly relaxed, curling over as I gasped for breath and clutched my head, moaning. It was like a dam burst inside my head. Magnus held me tight, rubbing my back. Lifting the weight of keeping my sphere active was almost as painful as it had been to keep it active that long. Sobs racked my body, and through it all Magnus stroked my hair, whispering to me. I wasn't even sure what he was saying. I just clutched his clothes and cried. You know, I gotta say, it's a nice touch that all of them came out of uniform. To be like, we're not here on official Endgame business. We're here because we care. This is like, we weren't sent by the council. Which I mean, you know, if you're in your right mind, you could be like, oh, the council, like, ordered you to wear casual clothes, but I like that they're, for me, the player, I like that they're not in their uniforms. At some point, I was aware that others joined him, but it was just my guard. I wasn't sure I could trust them, but I wanted to. I needed to. It was Caleb that lifted me off the sofa, thanks. I tried to cling to Magnus, but he pulled my hands away and assured me he wasn't going anywhere. I could hear him giving quiet orders to the others and realized his guard was present as well.
They aren't to get near her. Any of them. I don't care what the orders are. Understood?
You don't have to even say it. We wouldn't let them have another go at her anyway. I will monitor their movements. We'll know right away if they try anything.
Alright, let's get a team together! Let's go! And that too.
Let's go. Yu has been on a rampage the entire morning. He's worried sick, even though he won't say it that way. And we can all see what terrible shape she's in. We need to get her to the infirmary.
I didn't want to go to the infirmary, but my head was so bad even I knew I needed to. So I didn't protest when we left my flat. I just shut my eyes and tried to keep myself awake no matter what. I managed to maintain consciousness all the way to the infirmary, somehow. It was strangely familiar being carried into a room by someone. Dr. Sasuke tried to ask questions about what happened, but I was in no shape to answer. Instead, they set to work on stabilizing me. He tried to sedate me at one point, which caused a mild panic, understandably. It was Magnus who talked me through it, assuring me he'd stay close by, and the others would stay close by, and they would all watch over me. That was the last thing I remembered before things faded and I slept. I was astonished to awake in Magnus's office, curled up on the sofa. Confused, a little concerned, but better than I had been, I sat up.
You wasn't sure you'd wake up this soon. I hope you're feeling better. Despite everything, you didn't do as much damage to yourself this time around.
Why am I here?
We didn't want to keep you in the infirmary. Too many eyes and ears.
I see. He came and joined me on the sofa.
We have much to discuss.
Yes, we do. Because with the way things currently stood, I had no idea what could be in my future at this place. I don't think the Moirai know either, haha.
Now, you don't have to look that gloomy. I'm sure the situation isn't all that bad.
I gave him a look half exasperated and half annoyed. Do I need to re-explain what happened last night?
You're alive, with every important part of you intact. From there, you can find a solution to any problem plaguing you.
The council of the most powerful organization on the planet hates me. Can I find a solution to that?
Of course. After all, the highest-ranking agent in the same organization quite likes you.
I looked away, surprised at the faint heat that brought to my face. I let out a soft breath and rubbed my forehead. Priorities. I still had a lingering headache despite the Dr. Sasuke insisted he was surprised how little damage I'd done during that last power surge. And I couldn't call this pain so much as persistent dullness. Fog. Magnus had brought food to his office, but I hadn't touched it. I was hungry but couldn't muster the motivation to eat. I had people helping me, and yet somehow I was so alone, crushed beneath the burden of all this. To my surprise, I felt Magnus's fingers under my chin. He turned my face to him, the smile on his face gentle and amused.
I already told you to not look so gloomy. You keep staring out at the city with such a desolate look on your face. You're going to make me sad too if you keep it up.
How am I supposed to feel anything else?
I already told you the situation isn't as hopeless as you think. Nor are you as powerless as it seems.
I don't see any way that can be true.
Not yet, perhaps. But I won't let you keep that frown on your face much longer, Morgan. A smile suits you better. Or that adorable look on your face when you're curious about something. That irritated expression is also quite charming in its own way.
A wry little laugh escaped despite myself. You're terrible at cheering people up.
I'll have you know I am excellent at annoying people until they forget they're upset.
That seems accurate.
You will get through this. I'm certain. To be honest, I thought from the start that you might figure out how to turn your nanosystem back on. Given you had shown you can mimic my abilities, it seemed within the realm of possibility. The Council, it seems, never considered it.
Why didn't you say something?
What should I have said?
Maybe if your nanosystem comes online at random, don't call home. Instead, report the situation right away.
Ah, but that would have required me to foresee you turning it on unconsciously. Alas, precognition is not my forte. In any case, if I said something, you may have done it even sooner. Psi ability is all about imagination. Once you think you can do something, once you can envision it, it becomes that much easier to do.
I suppose that's true. You could have warned the Council.
Well, I have my reasons for not doing that.
Like what? He was silent, expression going dark. Dark and culpable. Like what, Magnus?
What if they turned your system back on and you didn't need me anymore?
That cannot have been your only reason. His expression was still troubled as he looked outside.
I am used to feeling needed only for my abilities. Yet somehow, the thought of no longer being needed by you was unpleasant.
If that was a concern, you could have just told me you wanted to spend time with me.
I'm unaccustomed to making my wants known like that.
He still wouldn't look at me for some reason. I reached for his hand. I'm not angry about this or blaming you, I hope you realize. I was just curious why you wouldn't relay a concern like that. He gave me a weak smile, pulling his hand from under mine. Keeps doing that. Every time she reaches for his hand, he's like, I'm just gonna pull that away.
I'm glad to hear it.
What will happen now?
That depends on many things, you included.
Do you know what they were doing last night?
Not the full extent, but I can guess most of it. I might find more if I dig a little, but I doubt it's needed.
They injected me with something. A sedative, I think. And I saw scanners, too. Were they gathering medical samples from me?
You could work out that much, even in that kind of situation.
When I woke up, they said something about the sedative. Their equipment scattered when I fought back, so I saw the vials and things. Like they were going to take a blood sample or something.
To be honest, I'm a little relieved I'm not the only one to take an elbow to the head from waking you up at the wrong time.
No, you're still the only one to take an elbow to the head. I just kicked those guys.
Well, I suppose I'd rather take an elbow to the head than a foot. Though there's no way to be certain which is better unless I experience both.
I am not kicking you in the head to sate your curiosity.
I said nothing about wanting to be kicked in the head by you.
You've said enough odd things to me, I wouldn't be at all surprised to hear those kinds of words coming from your lips.
While I'm flattered to know you've spent any amount of time thinking about my lips, I must say I'm worried about the mental image you have of me, Morgan.
If you were that worried about it, you'd be much more careful about the things you say to me.
Where's the fun in that?
I think we were in the middle of discussing something serious. You know, like how those in charge of this organization sent people into my flat at night to take medical samples without permission.
Yes, I suppose we were. You're curious what they wanted them for, I assume? I'm afraid it's not a pleasant reason.
Shocking. The fact they sneaked into my apartment at night in black suits tipped me off.
Lethe's presence there might have as well. I imagine she maintained a reverse cage to ensure no one in the surrounding apartments realized what was happening.
Come to think of it, I suppose it was strange none of them sensed anything. I guess by the time they heard the noise, it was a bit late.
Morgan, what I'm going to tell you here today, you must understand, is something no one else knows. Not even the other members of the Guard.
The teasing, light-hearted tone drained from his voice, and, in a manner I was familiar with already, that facade dropped away as he grew serious.
Endgame has many secrets. Quite a few of them are unpleasant. And for this one...
Magnus pulled his glasses off and ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking sad and weary in a way I'd never seen before. He turned his face away, looking out over the city. I studied him in profile, watching as he twisted a long lock of blonde hair between his slender fingers.
For this story, we have to go back quite a long time in Endgame's history. And I'm afraid it will shatter everything you thought you knew about this organization.
I'm afraid it's a little too late for that. Everything that's happened until now has chipped away at what I thought this place to be. But last night obliterated any faith I had left in Endgame as an institution. Gone. And I don't think it's coming back.
Then I suppose I don't have to worry about this being shocking for you. You know of Endgame's primary objective, yes?
Protecting the planetary AI.
Correct. Endgame was founded by the AI, and though our function has evolved with time, at the core of all we do is protecting the AI. And keep the mainframe's location from being found or accessed by others. Because of a king rank's unusual abilities to manipulate technology in such an intricate way, and to such a profound degree, king ranks are Endgame's biggest enemy. And its greatest weapon. Normally, the AI's defenses are limitless. They are like a god to this world. Remote, untouchable, and all-powerful if they wished it. But king ranks can take control of that god. Whoever controls the AI controls everything else. You can imagine the chaos that would ensue if someone unpleasant found themselves in control of a computer system capable of controlling all the technology on this planet.
That does seem like it would create some social discord.
On this planet right now, there are only 2 known king-ranked Espers. And of course, there is now you, who can mimic king-rank abilities. That alone should tell you why you spooked the Council to this degree.
Ah, that does make some sense.
When you were brought here, they believed they were gaining a queen, a weapon. And within days, you showed you are a game-changing piece on this board.
Because they think I can take control of the AI and mainframe? He laughed at the doubt in my voice. I never considered the fact that she would be able to do that, but if she is able to mimic a king... Huh. Alright.
It's true that a king rank's terrifying power comes down to that in the end. But king ranks are more than that. We can dig up almost any fact about anyone. We can manipulate the nanosystem itself. Some of us have quite a large range as well. We can find information, change information, erase or create information. In a world where the AI sleeps, we take on the semblance of that god. We are a dangerous bunch. You can begin to see why I sit in the position I do, despite having this sort of personality.
I don't think you're... He held up a hand, halting my instinctive defense of him.
If any of the others somehow located and accessed King's central unit, I would be the last line of defense to keep them out, Morgan. But of course, the Council also sees me as a threat, just as they see you as a threat. The difference between you and me is that I was born for this role.
You make it sound like it was your destiny or something.
It would be nice if it was something as innocuous as destiny, but unfortunately that's not what I mean. You see, from the moment the first king rank was discovered, kings became central to Endgame's function and purpose. But we're rare. It's no wonder that a day came when Endgame found itself in a perilous situation, one it had not yet encountered. The sole king rank in the organization died, and there were no other known king ranks on the planet at that time. And they realized if someone else located one before they did, the AI would be left unguarded. One of my functions is to search for high-ranking Espers on Arcalis. My range is not planet-wide, but I can utilize the nanosystem to locate resonance anomalies within a certain range.
Resonance? A unique attribute of nano-espers. As Psi originally stemmed from alterations to human anatomy by the nanites for the purpose of utilizing the nanosystem, nanites still play a role in the development and use of Psi for nano-espers. Resonance is poorly understood, but seems to involve some sort of synchronization between an Esper's Psi waves and the trace energy emitted by nanites, causing an increase in their Psi capability. The higher an Esper's internal nano-resonance, the higher their natural abilities will be. All N-class Espers inherently use nanite resonance to utilize their Psi, but it is not a trait shared with F-class Espers. Rendering a person's nanosystem inoperable can disrupt nano-resonance and cause brief interruptions in an Esper's use of their Psi. Simply disconnecting an Esper's connection to the net does not have the same effect. It requires specifically and fully disabling their individual nanosystem rather than dampening their connection to the rest of the nanosystem or partial nanosuppression. Huh, okay.
This lets me pinpoint possible Espers. Other kings have this ability as well. However, without a king here, they had no way to search for a new one.
So what did they do?
Endgame scoured the planet for a new king rank without letting on the previous had died. It wasn't a method they were used to using, but with an army of Espers at their disposal, they eventually found one. But as they feared, others got to her first. We're only fortunate that it's not easy to locate Avalon if you don't know what you're looking for.
And I'm pretty sure Avalon is the AI. Okay, no, Avalon is not the AI. It's the place of the AI, I think? Yeah, they first met King there, located deep in the Twilight Wastes. And Magnus knows exactly where it is, right.
Endgame retrieved the king and brought her to Core Solaris. But by that time, she was in no shape to function as a part of the Esper force. At best, she was a puppet. A figurehead to prove Endgame had a king at the top. But they feared she wouldn't last long, and they couldn't risk a repeat of that situation. So they turned to cloning.
Cloning? But human cloning is, well, illegal. Though it was obvious the council didn't care about things like legality. Such a small thing like legality? Stop the council? Pfft. If they didn't consider themselves above the law, they at least considered themselves outside it.
I suppose they thought the end justified the means. And something is only illegal if others know about it.
That's a convenient way to look at it.
In the name of planetary security, sometimes convenience takes precedent.
Do you believe that?
Who knows? But the Council certainly does. Even now, there are projects in the research division that no one else knows about. Projects never spoken of outside closed rooms buried deep beneath this building. The cloning project is one of many.
Is one of many. So this project still exists. I was starting to see where this was going, and I didn't like it one bit.
Did you know, Morgan, that cloning Espers is far more difficult than cloning normal people?
I wasn't aware, because cloning humans is illegal. And so is Esper experimentation. So I would imagine cloning Espers is particularly illegal.
It is. Though everyone was trying to do it soon after the first Espers were discovered.
I suppose that shouldn't surprise me.
None of them were successful back in the early days of Esper research. Though we have to some degree harnessed the power of human genetics, there are some mysteries that are beyond us. It takes dozens of attempts, dozens of eggs to create a single viable clone. Only 1 in 75 of such clones will go on to develop psi abilities at all. And even fewer develop abilities at all similar to the original.
How is that possible if the clones share genetic material?
Even twins, natural clones, aren't fully identical. There are mutations, variations in environmental exposures, nutrition. If they cloned me, they could never reproduce the exact environment in which I developed as an embryo. Then there is the role the nanites play in Esper development.
I suppose that's true.
Beyond that, for cloning to be a viable way to reproduce specific types of Espers, they need to be able to age them quickly. That sort of genetic manipulation can cause irregularities that affect the final product as well. You can imagine it takes hundreds, even thousands of attempts to create a single clone with the abilities of its predecessor. It's expensive, difficult, the failure rate is high, and then failures need to be dealt with ethically.
Ethics doesn't seem like a top priority for this project.
Perhaps not. But I suspect we haven't quite reached the point of slaughtering failed clone children just yet.
Yes. Well, that's horrifying to think about.
It is indeed. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. Most likely, they wanted samples of genetic material for use in this cloning project.
I was hoping you wouldn't say that.
Eggs, tissue samples, detailed medical scans. They would be after anything that would help.
Eggs. Wow.
At the start, the only Espers involved in the project were the kings. As I said, it's expensive. There are many reasons not to clone random Espers that seem interesting. Kings are essential, so that's where their focus was. Most kings from that point onward had cloning attempts made. Some were successful, some were not. There have been a few, as they call them, shadow kings in Endgame's history.
Wait, then you...
Cloning a clone almost always fails, so there isn't a clone of me. Rather...
My stomach dropped to the floor at those words, which he uttered with almost no emotion. He was a clone? I told you, he was a science baby! I wasn't sure if they, grew him from scratch, but he's still a science baby. Aw, man. Magnus stopped and stared out across the city again. His expression wasn't sad, just empty.
My predecessor was my mother's cousin. A second cousin. Third, perhaps.
So how does your mom play into this? Is she your mom in any way? Or is it just that there is a relation because of it being a cousin situation?
The timing of their successful creation of a viable embryo and his death coincided. That embryo was implanted, and I was born normally. Avoiding the usual growth acceleration meant a higher chance of success.
Ah, I see. I'm trying to imagine a world where it's like, you must carry the embryo of your second/third cousin to term. And then he will look like that clone? I mean, like the original, I assume. It's just such a mess.
When they identified I was an Esper, and later a king rank, it was as if everything fell into place exactly as it should have been. I entered the academy none the wiser. Endgame's golden boy. Every detail of my life was structured to prepare me for the role ahead. I lived and grew up believing the illusion in front of me. I never questioned it.
Then how did you find out the truth?
Sylvia's death was what made everything crumble. Or perhaps it was her arrival that set us on that path.
I knew Sylvia was tied into this somehow.
But the rot had started long before. By the time she left us, she had pulled the curtain back to reveal how corrosive Endgame's ideals had become. I believe she was the first queen rank they tried to clone.
What made them decide they needed to clone her?
She came to Endgame late, like you. It was her little brother our agents found initially. Sylvia came along with him because she was still a minor and they had no parents. She also hid she was an Esper. Though unlike you, she knew she was a queen rank and hid it anyway. Sylvia had a unique way of looking at the world, and it didn't always align to what the Council wanted. She questioned everything, from Endgame itself to how we understood Psi. And her loyalty was never to this place, only to the people she loved. In that regard, I think you are also similar. Her attack abilities, what queens are renowned for, were weak. But she had unique traits, and her theokinetics were unmatched.
Did they succeed in cloning her?
It seems there was one clone of her, yes.
So if they cloned her, is that who we're seeing that's working, you know, quote unquote, working for Brennan? Is it her clone? In which case, she's not dead. I mean, the original's dead. And also, okay, so theory time, everybody, buckle in. So, if the Sylvia we know that we've seen is a clone, and I presume she was in the same facility as Brennan, because he's also a clone. The fact that Rory was also in that building, is Rory a clone as well? Are we all clones? Is anybody real? I have questions. Are we all just clones in this world? Okay, well, I get to ponder on that for a bit. Then what happened to her? Why didn't she take Sylvia's place? Okay, nope, Sylvia's still dead no matter what.
Well, she died. Like her predecessor.
There was something about the way he said that, voice catching in a way that said there was more to that story. So they opened the project up to queen ranks, and I was just unlucky enough to be the next one.
If they had not already decided queen ranks were worth cloning, you would have been the deciding factor. Perhaps they might have done it with more subterfuge if your transition to Endgame had been smoother. You has no idea this project exists, but they might have found some way to get him to take samples under the guise of a legitimate reason. Your personality made them move faster than they would have otherwise, because they saw your lifetime as a useful agent would be short. The result would have been the same. Why bother winning you over when they can just expend the resources to make a more compliant copy?
I see. Wow, Endgame can suck a whole load of dicks, because they suck in every which way possible. Holy crap, I didn't think it could actually get worse, but it just keeps getting worse. You make it sound like they'd replace me with a clone the moment they had one available.
Perhaps they would. You have a fascinating slate of abilities. Yet you are, to their mind, frustrating and uncooperative. You question things. You were angry when they were disagreeable. And it was obvious your loyalties were elsewhere. A queen with your potential and talent, but total loyalty to Endgame, is a temptation they'd never be able to resist. The fairy phenomenon changed the playing field of Arcalis. High ranks are becoming more common, Not so common you can just stumble on them, but common enough other factions are getting to them first. Crimson had 2 king ranks that were brothers. Noir was rumored to have found a queen some years ago. Crimson found one a few years ago as well. Even the host is said to have a queen among their ranks.
It's true. Endgame no longer has the monopoly on all the high ranks, then? That's the problem that's making the council so desperate to control people like me?
No one can compare to Endgame. Yet. But the tide is turning. It began years ago and the speed is accelerating, with others building stronger Esper forces. Someday someone will make a play for the planetary AI again, and it will be war. Endgame cannot be caught weakened when that happens.
Is that what the Moirai have been warning them about? Is that this big event Lethe sees?
What Lethe sees? I don't know about that.
I feel like she's had it in for me since I arrived. And she was there that night in my room as well, wanting to erase my memories. I didn't even know something like that was possible.
It isn't, for most bishops. But that sort of thing is one of her specialties. You're lucky she's improved enough to not scramble your mind when she does it anymore.
Interesting. So, that's why your mind's all scrambled, because she had to practice on you for a while? There was a certain unmistakable bitterness to his voice as he spoke of all this. Not heavy, tangible bitterness, but something more distant. I thought about how often he seemed to struggle to remember simple things. Yep, here we go. The way he seemed to dislike Lethe. To not scramble my mind, huh? Something else had happened to him. Something worse than cloning. Hug this poor boy. Hug him. He needs it. Though I didn't have the details, I could piece together what had happened to him in the past. There was something so heartbreaking about the way he spoke. Dispassion with a slight bitter edge. Maybe time had stripped away the strength of his emotions when he looked back on it, or else he was trying to keep emotion from showing. Surprising even myself, I leaned closer and wrapped my arms tight around him. Magnus wasn't expecting it either. He went stiff as a board beneath my arms like he didn't know what to do at first. When he spoke, I thought he was aiming for his usual lighthearted tone, but it came out strained.
To what do I owe this sudden display of affection?
I pulled away a little sheepish. I was just thinking that you must have gone through a lot. You've been here a long time, and is it presumptuous to feel like I can hear it in your voice? Magnus let out a soft chuckle. His arms finally found their way around me, looping around my shoulders as he drew me close again.
If anyone here knows me well enough to hear that sort of thing in my voice, it would be you.
I haven't even known you that long.
Well, you're not wrong. Even so, is it presumptuous of me to say I think you know me better than most?
That sent fluttery warmth racing through me. I tried to ignore it because now was not the time for warm, fluttery feelings. Everything is dark and awful. But despite my best efforts, it wedged itself in my stomach, both pleasant and concerning. But it wouldn't leave despite the cruel turn the conversation took.
I could drag my story out, give you all the torrid details. The ending will be the same, though. There was someone who wanted to obtain me, my abilities, my knowledge. It isn't uncommon. Though the world continues on, there is always desperate clawing through the shadows to find the location of Avalon, the physical location of the AI's mainframe. It would take an exceptional king rank to trace the way to King through the nanosystem. The easiest way to connect to the AI would be through a physical location. However, most terminals were destroyed long ago.
He set his chin on the top of my head as he continued his story, and I just leaned against him, listening to his voice vibrating through his chest. I like that.
There is only one Esper that knows the current location where most believe the AI sleeps.
You, of course.
Its information is passed between every one of Endgame's kings, and it is dangerous knowledge to possess. It makes me the key to controlling the AI, which is the key to controlling everything else. There was a trap. Perhaps the perpetrators thought the council would be loath to sacrifice so many high-ranked Espers for one king. They were wrong. The council simply let the others be killed. Vanessa was the only one to survive that, and you've seen the aftermath.
So that's what happened. They were trying to get Magnus to find out where the AI was located, and the council deemed everybody else as acceptable losses. Aftermath. Her prosthetics, which meant she'd been severely injured in whatever happened back then. The extent of those injuries must have been horrific.
I don't remember that time anymore. I could piece together the events with the help of a friend. I know I was devastated. There were council meetings where I frantically implored them to turn me over before the time limit. But watching those recordings is like watching a complete stranger. I don't recall ever having felt that strongly about anything. I struggle to imagine it.
What made the council send Lethe to you?
I suppose being devastated by the sacrifice of my comrades is what prompted them to tinker with my mind. I had an emotional breakdown, I suppose you could say. And they couldn't have me so attached to others if it was going to cloud my judgment. They spent a lot of time and effort to make me their perfect king rank, after all. I suppose they wanted to make sure I'd be able to keep going and making sacrifices for my own sake, no matter how much blood drenched my hands. She was still young then, still learning. Something went awry when she tried to rip those memories and relationships away from me. When I woke up, I remembered nothing at all, as if I was a complete blank slate with nothing but a great emptiness inside me.
Sheesh!
There were just enough broken pieces left for me to know something was wrong. But who I was, or why it even mattered, I had no idea.
The look on my face when I looked up at him must have been horrified. Without even realizing at first, there were tears stinging my eyes. Thinking of what happened to him. Of what could have happened to me. Of what he and the others were protecting me from. My throat constricted and I could barely swallow past the painful lump there. Magnus laughed a little, running his knuckles across my cheek.
I suppose it does sound bad when I put it that way.
It sounds terrible. My voice trembled as I somehow found the strength to choke those words out. I caught his hand, squeezing it. I don't know how you can always laugh about those things.
Well, it was long ago.
Plus, he doesn't remember what he forgot, so any feelings he had associated with it he doesn't have either to be like, well, it's gone. I don't know. Did I care about it? It's like I'm looking at a stranger. I've zero idea. Time takes the rawness of the pain away. I can't imagine it makes it completely fade.
It's difficult to feel pain for something you don't recall having.
Exactly. I don't believe that.
I suppose there's a chance I tell myself that so I can ignore the loss.
I hugged him again, holding him tight. If I could somehow undo that loss, I would. But those were cheap words. Something like this could never be undone. And I hated that. Maybe we could time travel again. I just don't understand. How does the ruling body of an organization devoted to keeping peace become so morally bankrupt?
Time tarnishes all things.
That's such a hopeless way to think.
Perhaps. If you believe we can only succumb to the inevitable. But if you believe principles can be renewed, remade, that all things are cyclical, that when the old Endgame dies, a new and better one will be born.
Magnus stood and stretched, his back cracking loudly. I feel that.
I've realized what a long story this actually is. Long, depressing, and not good for the appetite if your plate is any indication. Perhaps I should make some tea and you should try to have something. I'm sure you're hungry.
I watched him retreat to the kitchenette to put water on. In the meantime, I picked up the plate of food, long grown cold. Not that I cared. I took a few hesitant bites as I went over the information Magnus had given me so far. There was so much to think about, so much I never could have imagined. And he had been dealing with it all for so long. I didn't know how he'd made it this far. I was staring down at the complex below, deep in thought, when he joined me on the sofa again. Based on what you told me, you must have looked into what had happened to you, right?
I did. Though at first I spent time just trying to relearn simple tasks like feeding myself.
That much was taken? Good God in heaven.
I couldn't shake the persistent feeling something was wrong. Perhaps because Psy came naturally, I began poking around. I wasn't even curious. I just wanted the sense of wrongness to go away. That was how I encountered a friend I'd forgotten.
You said a friend helped you piece things back together. Same person?
They helped me piece it together, but my memories never returned. I simply watched myself through their eyes. I suppose I reconstructed myself from that.
Through their eyes? Just who was this friend? Another king, I'm assuming.
You know them as King.
The AI helped you? Okay. It took a moment for those words to sink in. King? The AI? The dormant AI?
Not dormant like most believe.
Wait. Magnus, you're saying the AI is active? Awake?
This reaction is better than I thought.
Magnus! Isn't this an issue of planetary security or something? Does the council know this too?
No.
What? Magnus was still laughing as he took a sip of his tea, clearly enjoying my reaction.
Well, it seems like King never went dormant at all. They just stepped back and watched us for a while. That's another story. It's funny. King was the reason it all happened, but without them, I'd never have got even a shred of myself back again. Because, of course, the council was never protecting me at all. They were protecting King. Always. But I suppose you could say I was able to piece myself together based on King's memories of how I was prior, since we spoke often. Just an imperfect replica of something already broken beyond repair. Well, it's only ever been a facade anyway. I learned that everything I thought about myself was a lie. You could say that ended any desire to get my memories back. There wasn't much point in getting back a lie. Instead, every day is just putting on an act to be the Magnus they all knew before. Even though I don't even remember being that man. In the end, everything about this place is a lie.
Even this, right now, is this a lie? A mask you're wearing for my sake? Or other times we've spent together? He looked at me with surprise. I just think that would be sad.
No. I suppose there's no need for a mask with someone who doesn't know what I was like before anyway. When I'm with you, that mask always somehow slips away.
Good. Because the only you I've ever known is the Magnus in front of me right now.
Sometimes it's like you're the only one that has seen right through that to whatever is left of the real me.
This moment between us, this flame that was tremulous, tender, and oh so fragile, For all the world, in that moment, I wanted to cup my hands around it and blow it stronger. To just exist here for as long as I could and forget the rest of it for a while. Maybe if we huddled together in this mutual pain and frustration and isolation, a beautiful flower of hope could grow. We could find some sort of strength. But of course it was never that easy, was it? Everything else didn't go away because I wanted it to. I looked back outside, trying to recenter my thoughts on the current situation. So where do things go from here? What happens now? I know what they wanted from me and that they didn't get it, but I can't say what happens next.
I'm certain they're trying to figure out how to handle this. They didn't anticipate your thwarting them, and you're not as alone as they might hope. The entire First Guard has taken the stance of being on your side. While the others don't know the full situation, they've made it clear they're willing to protect you. The Council's options are limited.
What, are they afraid the entire Guard will lead an uprising?
I imagine they are more afraid we simply won't listen to them. What can they do to us if we don't? They have ways of dealing with unruly agents, but not the entire First Guard. At least for now, I expect they'll pretend nothing at all happened. A sort of uneasy truce for at least a while.
But not permanently. At least you've got, like, a smidgen of time to come up with a plan.
No. We have to find a way to address the core problem, don't we?
If everything you said is true, the core problem is King and whatever uncertain future has the Moirai worried. At best, we can address the secondary problem of them thinking it's okay to go to such lengths.
Yes.
I rested my arms on the back of the sofa, realizing how tired I was. For a long while, Magnus and I were silent. I remembered when I first arrived, feeling dwarfed by the enormity of Endgame and what it stood for. Now I realized how much enormous things were just made of many smaller things. Endgame was made of so many individuals, and some of them were hurting so badly. And to the outside, none of it was visible. To others, they were heroes. Or, maybe, villains. But they weren't either. Just normal people. Kind or unkind. Good, bad, flawed. I shouldn't let myself be so disappointed this organization had such deep problems. That was a given. Humans were imperfect. But how did one fix such deep flaws? I didn't know. It was like quicksand. The questions, endless and unanswerable beneath the mire of frustration and pain. And thin threads of hope that somehow it would turn out all right in the end.
It's an interesting thought, though, isn't it?
I think I'd almost been dozing off when Magnus spoke again. I shook off the drowsiness and tilted my head so I could look at him. What is?
The thought of a world without the planetary AI. And no endgame needed to protect it. Don't you sometimes think we'd all be better off that way? The Civil War started because of the AI, so King founded Endgame. Endgame solidified the place of Espers in this society. The continued presence of the AI now holds us all hostage, doesn't it? A sleeping god hiding in the wastes.
Even without the AI, Espers would exist. Society would still need a way to figure out their place. I suspect people would still want to regulate Espers in some fashion.
Perhaps that's true. But regulating Espers differs from treating them like game pieces that must be placed just so to keep the entire world from falling into chaos.
Maybe. But it's difficult to change hundreds of years of structure and purpose. Once a system is in place, it's difficult to shake it up or change it. That's the stuff revolutions are made of. And revolutions are painful.
It's a shame it has to be that way.
I agree.
Perhaps we should just run away then. Avoid it all.
That would be nice. I suspect that would cause an uproar of its own.
It might be worth it.
I can only imagine how my mum would feel to find out I ran off with Endgame's king.
Obviously, she'd be pleased you made off with such an excellent catch.
She probably would be. Magnus stood again. Before I could ask where he was going, he pulled a throw from the other end of the sofa and draped it over me. Thank you.
You are tired, and this has been a lot to take in. I shall let you rest.
Here?
You may recall the state of your bedroom.
I don't remember how bad it was.
Well, you set off the building's defense system. Again.
Oh.
We'll have to have a repair team in, or else assign you a new place. Either way, my sofa's rather comfortable. I sleep on it quite a lot, so I know.
You sleep here a lot?
Well, it's more comfortable than my flat.
I was curious about that quirk, but decided to let it slide as I pulled the fuzzy throw tighter. He cleaned up while I lay there, thinking I wouldn't sleep after so many painful revelations. But I underestimated how tired I still was. For the second time since my arrival, I fell asleep curled up on the sofa in Magnus's office.